It's imperative that people learn their duties and their responsibilities. If that's not happening, we get into these wards that operate like a phone that hasn't updated in like 3 or 4 years.
Everyone just ends up doing mostly what the person before them did, whether they were good or not. It's like, I'm just going to do what that guy did because nobody was yelling at that guy.
And now for a cultural callout. We sure don't appreciate that.
Welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm, and this is my brother Tanner. And today, we're talking about a cultural call-out that I've noticed ever since being an adult in the church, which is the little amount of training that most members actually receive while they're in their callings. So let me preface this with a bit of a story. So when I was younger, I remember that I worked at this little chicken shack that was on the side of this major road in northern Utah. I remember day one, I show up for work. I got my new uniform on and everything, and they're like, okay, all right, we're going to have you work the window. So I go over to the window, and I'm like, double checking, like, hey, I don't know how to work the window. And somebody came by, and they gave me like a quick rundown. They're like, well, typically you're going to want to do this, push these buttons when they ask for X, Y, and Z, and you should be fine. I'm like, okay, great, awesome. The first customer that came through that day pulls up to the window. They go, and they're like, excuse me, I'd like 4 number 5s, a large Coke, and please just pull forward. So she pulls forward and she unloads about like 8 to 9 different coupons. And she's like, I read somewhere that you allow coupon stacking. And I was just like, I don't know what to do with this. And while that's happening, I'm getting notifications that more cars are coming behind them. So I'm like, oh crap. I go back to my manager, and I, being like this introverted, shy young boy, I'm like, hey, how do I work the coupons? And my manager looked at me and was like, what are you doing back here? You need to go back up there. There are customers waiting for you. And I was just like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And so I rushed back over to the computer, and I'm just like, and then I just kind of toyed around with it until I think I found something that worked. And then I got them off and just kept going throughout the rest of the day. And that was pretty much the basis of the rest of my time working for those guys. It was just like, I had no idea what I was doing half the time. And the other half the time, I was probably doing things that I shouldn't have been doing because I had no training, but I didn't know any better.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like we get into a similar situation in the church where, because we get into a calling, there's constantly work that needs to be done. There's this pressure that comes when you step into the calling. That's like, you need to start working immediately. And yeah, you have to do some things that immediately happen. However, it doesn't leave you a whole lot of time for actual training. And you don't actually understand what the handbook is asking you to do unless you take time out of your own schedule and read through the handbook and then apply it to your situation. But how does that check out? What have you experienced in the church?
I feel like there's no like onboarding process for a new calling. And, so it's mostly, I think the extent of the onboarding process and the training is you meet with the previous holder of that calling. They give you whatever they deem is necessary, and you just kind of make it up from there, Like there's no, I mean, I'm sure in that, that there's some church resources to kind of walk you through all the like details of the callings and their limitations and responsibilities. But outside of that, there's a whole world where you have to operate in. And that is kind of a no man's land when it comes to being, having resources for people to help you through, like, how should I do this? It's just really kind of, I don't know. And that's where I think like everyone just ends up doing mostly what the person before them did, whether they were good or not. It's like, I'm just going to do what that guy did because nobody was yelling at that guy,
Right,
like, I'm just going to he seemed to be doing okay. Nothing was on fire when he was doing it. So if I keep doing it that way, I should be all right.
Well, I think the problem that comes up from that approach is that I feel like as you get into your new calling, they give you like a fire hose and a fireman's hat. And they say, all right, here's how I put out the fires. So if a fire comes up, you turn on the water, you put it out, And so I feel like it trains members to become reactive with their calling. The main problem that I see from this approach is that it leads to cultural traditions thriving and being passed on from
Oh, yeah.
organization to organization throughout time. And that's a huge problem because the handbook, I don't know if you actually check the emails or get the emails about the handbook when it updates, but they are updating that thing almost every single month. And so that's the way that the brethren are directly communicating with the leaders of every single local unit. And so, but it's kind of tough because reading the handbook is about as fun as reading a handbook will ever be. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
the handbook, great. This is something that I'd like to kick out to the comment section. What could we do? And I want to hear from wards that have a great onboarding process. How can we improve our onboarding process for callings? And what can we do to help encourage more members to actually get into the handbook and figure out what their calling actually entails? But I'd be interested in your thoughts.
I think that instead of having the previous person be the ones just kind of onboard you into the calling, what you should do is have somebody who's more permanent in the ward, somebody like somebody in the bishopric, or even like a high councilman or somebody in the stake somewhere, kind of walk them through, like meet with them once or twice, say, here's the process, here's what we expect, here's what you should do, here are your responsibilities, and have them on board the new members of any presidency or anything like that. I think that would be you get a lot more consistent results on that rather than having just people pass the baton and running whichever way they want to run,
Right. Now,
So
the
that's what I
problem
would
is, I think that does work, but the problem is if the bishopric is in the same old firefighting method, then it leaves little room for them to even know that that's their responsibility to train the other leaders, because I feel like everyone, if you're in a firefighting ward, you know it. Everyone is just doing everything last minute. Everyone's showing up completely unprepared. Things are just fly by the seat of your pants. And it's not a very effective ward. It makes it kind of tough to engage, and it makes it tough to actually feel like you're part of a community that's proactively thinking about you and about serving and things like that.
Well, this is where AI should jump in again. We mention AI often. Like, I feel like you could train an AI to understand all the responsibilities of all the callings in the ward and just have it there. Everyone, give everyone their own little ward model so they can run,
Well, and to the church's credit, they just came out with a handbook AI. And so now if you are in a presidency, maybe that's a solution. Is that like if you are in a presidency and you don't want to go rifling through the handbook to try and figure out what you need to do, you can actually just ask your questions directly to AI. Just like, hey, this is my calling.
Yeah.
What should my focus be? And what are my training materials? And then it'll help pop it up. The church has been coming out with so many great videos lately showing people how to actually do their calling and how to actually engage, how to structure their organization, how to prepare for their meetings and stuff like that. The church has been doing a killer job of that. I think it's just members don't know a lot of times that they have those resources to look for. But
so that's the real kicker is like, the culture needs to catch up to the church, tech and guidance. It seems like we're lagging behind quite a lot. So we just need an update on the culture there.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think it just involves leaders of the church, because I think every member has duties, right? So every member is a member of a family. And so as a member of a family, you're going to have responsibilities and duties associated to that family. So fathers are going to have duties that they need to learn about and probably get a little bit of training on. And where does that training come from? That should be driven from themselves. They shouldn't be waiting for someone to like give them their training and expect like, hey, here I am. Because I don't want to go too far on that side and say, all right, people should be coming to you and giving you your training. A lot of this needs to be self-started. So like your duty as a father, your duty as a minister, your duty as just a neighbor or a community member, that's all stuff that you should be taking on for yourself and figuring out, how am I going to improve my service as father or as husband or as an employee even, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, 100%. I think that, that's the ideal world. If you get everyone to log in and, check out all their responsibilities and maximize those, that would be awesome. But we can barely get people in pews, we can barely get people to church. So
yeah,
I feel like getting people there is sometimes enough, but if we have an ideal ward, and maybe we just need to find a ward somewhere that's ready to go all in. You know, a little city of Enoch ward.
Yeah.
That's ready to.
That's just ready to go hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's just see. You know, give them the AI that answers all the questions, and give the AI a ward that'll ask all the questions and see what comes of it. So, I think that would be awesome to watch it, happen. That'd be really cool.
So here's what the scriptures say. All right, D&C 107:99. It says, "Wherefore now let every man learn his duty, and to act in the office which he is appointed in all diligence." So there is a call to action for every single member to actually learn what you're supposed to do. So if you are called into an office, you shouldn't just wait for somebody to train you. You should try and figure it out as much as you can. And if you find yourself butting up against a lack of training, then approach your leaders at that point, and say like, hey,
100%.
I have some more questions. I'd like to do X, Y, and Z. I need some help. Can you offer me some training? Can you guide my efforts and direct me a little bit? I think that would be awesome. This is from the teacher study manual of the church. It says, leaders in the church and family must understand their duties in order to help those they serve receive the blessings of the gospel. So the key word in there, must. So it's imperative that people learn their duties and their responsibilities. If that's not happening, we get into these wards that operate like a phone that hasn't updated in like 3 or 4 years. And that gets super glitchy and slow, and is just like pretty much just a glorified clock at that point, And so the call to action here in the age of home-centered church is everyone should be learning their duties and whatever calling you are in. So even if you're in primary, learn the duties of a primary teacher. Go to the handbook, get your training, and if you need more training, go to your leaders, and ask for them. But I would say start with yourself first. Fix your own house as much as you can, and then go outward from there. And for that reason, we call the culture to step up a little bit, and we're calling it out. We're saying let's train a little bit harder, because we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. So the more that we are trained, the better our operations will be inside our wards, inside our families, and inside our neighborhoods and communities.